Okay, good to go.
Yes.
Yes.
So hi everyone. Really happy to have Sam here with us from Cisco. I know Sam. We've worked together, so I know he's really good at this, at working with senior leadership or preparing pitches. I'm sure you'll have a lot of useful tips. So really excited to hear about this one. At the end of the session, do share your feedback as well, and look forward to the session. So yeah, take it away, Sam.
Thanks for that intro, Sandhya. But before I start, folks, if you go to the app section in WebEx, you'll see Slido. And if you select that, there is a Q&A panel. You can ask your questions there and probably get to that towards the end. And we're also running a couple of polls. So that when I'll activate the poll at that time, if you go into Slido, you'll see the polls there and you can respond to that. Okay, let me just make this full screen. 1 second.
Sam, do you want me to explain how it looks for us, the polls and the Q&A? It's different from
sure.
the expert.
Sure, please.
Yeah, so there's on the right panel, you'll see Yorkers and pitching it up, right? So if you click that, you'll see 2 tabs, Q&A and polls. So if you have a question, you'd go to Q&A, and when Sam runs polls, you would click the polls section quickly.
Thanks, Anne. Okay, so here's a little bit more about myself. I've been a TechDocs manager now for around 18 years, 12 of which have been with Cisco, where I currently head the global documentation group for enterprise networking. That's the hardware and software for the routers, switches, and the wireless products for enterprise customers. Before I joined Cisco, I was with TCS for about 7 years, where I headed the TechDocs groups in Bombay and Bangalore. And also led the TCS teams at Microsoft and EMC in the US. Some of my current areas of interest are videos. I manage the video channels for different enterprise networking products at Cisco. Augmented reality, some of you probably know me from the Twin and STC sessions where I've spoken about AR for hardware products. And digital adoption platforms like WalkMe. We're currently actually implementing WalkMe in several of our products. I kind of wanted to highlight these interests in the beginning because I'll keep referring to examples from here during my session today. And a little bit about my outside work. I think pretty much everyone who knows me knows this. I don't stop talking about this. I'm kind of obsessed with collecting musical instruments of all shapes and sizes from all around the world. And my favorites include the flute and the saxophone. Okay, so that's enough about myself. Let's move on to the agenda. Right? So we look briefly at our learning objectives, look at specific situations when we as a TechDocs function need to influence our leaders. And I'll share one of my golden rules before I go to a leader. And then we'll talk through some tips and tricks for influencing a leader. And we'll wrap up with some key takeaways. You guys hear me okay, right? Yeah, okay.
It all sounds fine.
Okay, thanks. So what really is our learning objective today? Right? You're not going to walk away with like words of wisdom or magic tricks to make your director or VP listen to you. As I said earlier, I myself have failed many times trying to do that. Okay, maybe I should mute everyone. Just 1 sec. Okay, folks, if you're not speaking, can you mute yourself, please? Yeah. So what I'd like to do over the next 40 minutes or so is to share all my failures and some successes in working with senior leadership so that you don't really have to make the same mistakes when you try to pitch to your leaders. There are many senior leaders here, so I'd also like to invite them to pitch in with some of their stories about what worked and what didn't work. Okay. But before we start, a quick reminder of why we need a session like this. Here are some statistics. Right? A corporate survey found that 70% employees were not comfortable raising an issue with their boss, even when it was important. Right? Another study a couple of decades back found that 85% employees withheld ideas because they were afraid to speak up. And even when employees do speak up, an Accenture study showed that nearly 75% of ideas submitted through all these corporate online suggestion tools were never implemented. And forget pitching an idea to your leader, right? Another survey found that only 23% people feel that their leaders always listen to them. So yeah, I think we definitely need some tricks up our sleeve to make a dent here. So let's start this with a poll. I'd like to get some sense of your current roles. Right? Who do you report to currently? Do you report to a doc manager, a senior doc manager, or a doc director, or a non-tech docs like a engineering or ops manager, director, or VP? Let me just set the poll. Give me a second. Yeah, it should be live now. If you go to apps, as Anu said, go to Slido. You see the polls section. You should be able to respond there. It's interesting. You have 16 votes in. I don't think you can see that part of my screen, but yeah, I'll read it out. Okay, I give you 10 more seconds. I have 19 votes in. Okay, so we have about 20 odd people who responded, and first 14% report to a first line doc manager. About more than 50% report to a senior doc manager or a director, a doc director, and about 35% report to a engineering or ops, non-tech docs manager, director, or VP. That's interesting. So there's a reason, I asked this question, right? To my mind, there's some difference in how you make a case to a first-line doc manager, to a senior doc manager, or a non-tech docs exec. Right? Making a pitch to a first-line doc manager is easier. In most cases, they know exactly what you're doing, right? And can usually, instantly spot what will work and what won't. While, excuse me, while talking to your doc manager, you should ideally go with basic data points. But it's even acceptable to just have a conversation without having done any research. So if you're an IC in my organization and you go to your first line manager, and you ask them to maybe sponsor, say, a usability course from HFI, right? They're usually not going to ask you for data points, or to ask you to tell them how it fits into their larger org goals, right? If you've shown interest in UX in the past, they'll probably tell you that it's a great idea, and share some resources with you for you to do your research, and tell you that you should probably come back after reading up, or they'll tell you to talk to this other person in the team who's already done the course. Now, if you've never been involved in UX before, they'll try to probe to find out where the interest is coming from. Are you really interested, or is it just a passing fad? But yeah, they're never going to turn you down because you didn't do your homework. Now, when the first line manager is convinced and they bring it to me for approval, right, they don't come to me saying that you're considering exploring a course in UX, right? They'll talk about how we need to build UX skills in our org, how it's aligned to our, our functional goals, right? And how you are the right candidate to invest in because of this, of specific reasons. Right? Now, when I go to my manager, right, who's an engineering director, I might not be successful if I use any of these arguments. Right? So in today's session, we'll focus mostly on how we can influence non-tech docs exec leaders. Okay, so when you say an exec, right, or not an engineering and ops exec, it's not just a designation we're talking about, right? In my experience in this context, there are at least 3 types of engineering or ops leaders. There are the ones that that can read the game really well and know exactly when to leave you alone because they understand your caliber and skill set, right? They trust you to know what's best for the function, and they help you build your broader skills, and they act as what is conduits for for you to the larger organization, kind of multiplying your value to the company. And I've enjoyed working with execs like these because they they recognize your skills, at the same time they push you to get better at what you do, and they open up avenues that you never thought were possible. Then there are those who have no clue about what you do, but they leave you alone all the same, right? With such leaders, you get a lot of independence, but it's tougher to get your ideas through because one, they don't really understand the game, right, and the value that you bring to the org. I'm sure all of us have worked with such leaders at some point. And of course, there's also a category of leaders who are equally clueless, but they kind of get your team into a hit wicket situation, right? Because of the mostly self-serving interference that distracts you from your real goals. And I've worked with such people too, right? And what I do mostly in such situations is ignore whatever I can. And I find workarounds for situations that I can't ignore. Well, so you find all kinds of people. But let's get to the meat of the matter, right? So I have a golden rule before I go to a leader. Can I get this done at my level without additional funding or support? Can I say maybe redeploy resources at my level and staff a strategic initiative? Can I at least get a pilot done and then go to my leader for additional funding? This is very critical, and I'll share some more examples along the way. Okay, it's time for another poll. I want to kind of make this more relevant. So I want to hear from you on, when you or your doc manager typically approach senior leaders, that is directors, VPs, or senior VPs, to influence them about something for you or your team. So let me activate this poll. Hang on 1 second. Yeah, so this is a word cloud. It should be active now. So just, in one word or a couple of words, if you can say, what are the situations in which you go to a leader, right? Or what are the situations in which you'd like help with? It should be active now. If you can't see the poll, just let me know, please. Funding, yes. For funding for initiatives, I see headcount, that's a big one. Staffing, right? When you have some a specific problem that you need resolution for, I see resources, budget, tool requests, help with prioritizing deliverables, help with visibility, attrition, promotions, strategy approval, so approval with the overall direction. Yeah, I think there's a common theme, right? I think a lot of the reasons we go to our leaders is for budget, for staffing, whether it's for getting additional headcount or for for initiatives. Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. Okay, thanks for the response. So what I'd like to do is, let me cover one common scenario right now, and then I'll talk through some others, when I give examples. Okay. 1 second. Yeah. So for staffing, what you always need to ensure before you go to a leader for funding is that your internal capacity and deliverables planning is up to date. So you can make this a complicated affair, or you can just have this is just a very simple example, right? You can have a simple Excel sheet that looks something like this, right? You have you listed your product or your task. You've listed the scope of work for the next 2 or 3 quarters, or till whenever you have visibility, right? You list out the priority of the task, the headcount that you need, right? And the headcount that's available, and you list out what the gaps are, right? So the gaps can either be, the red here is basically saying, there's no way to staff this, right? The green is obviously staffed. The yellow means that, okay, we're not staffed for this, but it is something that we can deprioritize, right? And the orange means, hey, we don't have enough staff for this, but we're going to stretch and, get this done, right? And this is just a very simple example, right? But yeah, you get the idea. So what you're doing with this is you're changing the conversation from, my team has a lot of work and I need more people, right? To, hey, this is how I've allocated my people, right? And these are the gaps I see, right? Can you help verify that I've, aligned my people to the right priorities, right? And if you think we're aligned correctly, what do we do about the P1 gaps that you see here, right? And obviously, ideally, I'd like FT funding to, because everything is critical, right? But can I at least get some contractor funding till we identify an FT? So, well, there's not going to be a magic conversation, right, where you rub a lamp and FT suddenly appear, right? But I can pretty much guarantee that, you will get at least some contractor funding for tasks that the leader feels cannot be dropped, right? And if all stakeholders agree that a deliverable should be dropped, so be it, right? So what's really at work here? Is it just the data, right? Yes, it's the data to a large extent. but it's also the trust that the leader has that you explode all the possible avenues, and there's no other way but to fund this task separately, right? Now, without that trust, you can show all the data you want, right? And but you'll be met with a firm, almost disinterested no, right? And believe me, I've been through many of those situations. Right? And I'm not even talking about additional staffing, right? These, in these days, most companies, even replacement positions are not a given. And all the more reason why your leader needs to understand, what exactly you do and trust your judgment. Without that, it's an increasingly uphill task to get any funding when it comes to resources. And of course, additional staffing is a different ballgame altogether, right? How many of you have gone to your leader and said, I need to innovate and I need 5 people for that, right? Or rather, how many of you have said that and not returned empty-handed? That goes back to what I said earlier about managing things at your level. Strategic initiatives, yes, are critical for the survival of our function, right? But nobody gives you a blank check to run initiatives. And in most cases, you have to find the time yourself in the middle of the other 99 things you're already doing. So let me give you a couple of examples from my experience. Right? And the first one I'll talk about is videos. So everyone wants to do videos, right? But and a lot of leaders want you to do videos, right? But most leaders expect you to do videos with your existing resources without any additional funding. And those of you who worked on videos know that it requires a different skill set, dedicated tools, dedicated hardware, right? And even dedicated people for it. So when we started doing videos, I didn't really go to my leader and ask for all this, right? We created a few videos, with the little skill and resources we had, right? We socialized it with our internal stakeholders, showcased it at customer events, right? And then went to the leadership to say, right, hey, this is what we can do with our existing resources, right? This is the feedback we're getting from our customers. Imagine what more we can do if we have adequate resources, right? So in this case, our senior VP actually did what most senior VPs do, right? He said, Sam, you tell me what you need and I'll give it to you, but you need to ensure that we have at least 1 million views for our videos in a year. So, well, I had to remind him that we actually build networking software and not reality shows, right? But yeah, we got all the infrastructure we needed to get started. Yeah, so again, the data backing here was the feedback we showed from the initial videos we did, right? But what those initial videos also did is it built credibility for our team in the eyes of the VP, right? He would have thought, okay, so Sam and his team are not going to take my money, buy a lot of expensive stuff, right? And do nothing with it. It looks like they know what they're doing, so let's just give this a shot. And that kind of sums up one of my main takeaways for you for influencing leaders. Building relationships and credibility with leaders is key to getting anything from them. It obviously doesn't happen overnight, right? But from my experience, you don't also have to be a rising star to build credibility, right? Building awareness of your team's function at the senior leadership level is very critical. And that's an area where I think a lot of us fail, right? Even just asking an involved question in the leader's all hands can actually go a long way towards acknowledging your existence. And as with any other relationship, right, finding common interests that you can connect over is another great way. When I meet some execs, the first few minutes of our conversation are, about music or travel, right? And we get to work only after that. And I'd like to believe that, sorry, something stuck here. One second. Sorry. Yeah, so the connects that you have outside work, right? It kind of gives you a better audience with the leader, right, than just walking in and talking business, right? And then, of course, you have to follow it up by making use of every opportunity to showcase your team's successes and build credibility. So I'd like to move to another example, the work that I've done with AR, augmented reality. So for those of you who haven't explored AR and Tech Talks, you can probably look up recordings of some talks I've given on the subject. To kind of summarize, we're using AR to provide installation, configuration, and troubleshooting instructions overlaid on Cisco products in the lab. And this is for customers and field engineers who work directly with these devices. So yeah, I started research on this a few years ago. And very soon it is clear, that we needed a custom built solution, which would mean a significant amount of investment. Now, if I'd gone to my SVP at that time and said, hey, can you give me thousands of dollars to, build an AR solution for our devices, it would probably have been shot down immediately. I think because of two main reasons. Right? One, I had nothing to show but research, right? And this ties back to what I said earlier about ensuring that you've done everything you can before going to a leader. In this case, what I did is instead of going to ask for significant funding in the beginning, we played around with some low-cost, off-the-shelf software to build a pilot AR experience. And we showcased that at various internal and external forums and generated quite a bit of customer interest and actually feedback on possible use cases. Excuse me. So we studied all of it, and then we came up with a proposal to build a more permanent, customized solution that addressed all of our learnings. The second reason I would have failed if I went for funding in the beginning is if my ask was for money to play with a cool new technology like AR. So instead of that, after the success of the pilot, we framed the funding, right? We framed the funding ask in terms of the value that the AR solution would bring to the customer. Finding hardware installation or troubleshooting information on your laptop, right? For those of you who are familiar with hardware, right? You're in a lab, you get your laptop in and try to find information about the product there. And it's probably cumbersome at best, right? And reality almost impossible with a lot of the restrictions that are in place. So here was a solution that would give you, all the information you needed about the hardware device that's right in front of you. And hey, not only can you read all this info on the phone, AR allows you to project visual installation instructions right onto the hardware device that you're trying to set up. Right? So it's a cool solution, right? But more importantly, it's a useful solution, especially when we went a step further and added direct connectivity from the AR mobile app to the network controller, so that your phone fetches information from the controller and shows you status that is specific to the device you're managing. So the value proposition here was helping the customer, get to customized dynamic information right when they needed it, so that we could simplify the entire user experience and also push adoption, right? And this was aligned with not just a TechDoc strategic goal, but a company strategic goal. So that sums up my next point about pitching an idea. Frame your pitch in the context of a strategic goal that makes sense to your leader. Okay, so my next point is about tailoring your pitch to the specific leader you're talking to. Right? It's important that you understand what's top of mind for your leader. If, for example, usability is a top concern, you can leverage that when you ask for funding for that HFI example I mentioned earlier, the UX example I mentioned earlier, right? So the statement changes from, I want to build US expertise in my team to, I heard you say in the all hands, right, that UX is an area you need to invest in, right? And my team can help with that, right? So that's how we change the conversation. Also, when you're tailoring your pitch to a leader, there's another thing you need to keep in mind. You need to ensure that you don't mix your messages, right? So you can either sell something as a pioneering effort or push that fear button, right? The fear of missing out missing out on something that everyone else is doing, right? So in the AR example, you could sell it as we're going to do what nobody's really done before, right, to help with customer adoption. Or in the video example, you could sell it as all our competitors are doing video, right? If we don't do it, we won't hit our customer adoption targets. So research has kind of shown that mixing both these messages tends to lead to inaction. So apparently there are two types of leaders in this context: promotion-focused leaders and prevention-focused leaders. Promotion-focused leaders are risk takers, and they're easy to influence with the let's do what's never been done before approach, right? Because in their eyes, it's okay to try something and fail. Prevention-focused leaders, they don't like failure, right? And their focus is on preventing failure at any cost. So they respond better to the urgency that if we don't implement this idea now, our competitors are going to get ahead of us and we'll fail. So to reiterate, a third tip is to tailor your pitch to your leader. My next point is about pitching to the right person. And this seems very obvious, but it's still worth keeping in mind. So two factors here actually. One, the person you're speaking to should identify the problem you're trying to solve. So in our earlier example, you can't go to a leader who doesn't understand UX, right, and ask for funding to build UX expertise, right? To the person should be the one who makes the decisions, or else you're just wasting your time. And related to this is a point about leveraging others and building allies. Now, if the person making the decision has no clue what you're asking for, right, what you're talking about, what would work is to take the help of someone the leader trusts. So in the same example, if you if you sell your idea of getting involved with UX to a UX leader first, right? And if this leader is someone the decision maker trusts, right, then you leverage the UX leader to make your case with the person you're pitching to. It's probably a relatively trivial example, but the idea is you always build allies you can leverage when you need to pitch. Okay, moving on to something else. There was this time when we were pitching for a particular digital adoption platform, right, for our products, and the product manager, there's a product management director who is pitching for a competing solution, and we were kind of jointly pitching this to a group of VPs from our entire org, right, including his leader and my leader. I was absolutely convinced, that the platform we were pitching for was the right solution in terms of getting us everything that we needed, right? And we had several meetings prep for this, right? And I realized that I was being a little too passionate about selling this platform, right? It almost seemed like I had a vested interest in it. And actually, my manager pointed this out in a one-on-one, right? And then later I toned it down to a very objective comparison, right, between the two platforms being considered. So basically highlighting the value and leaving all the emotions out of it. I was also careful not to completely trash the other director's pitch, for the competing platform. And actually, in the end, the VPs signed off on the platform that we were pitching for. So that's my next point. You have to be careful about managing your own emotions and the emotions of the people on the other side. That is, the person you're pitching to or the person who's pitching a competing idea. Okay, it's time for the next point now. Getting your timing right is a virtue not just for a good batsman, but also for a good pitch. We've all had times when our budgets were bleak and you could barely make ends meet in terms of core deliverables. I remember during one such time, we consciously took the decision not to pitch for funding for certain initiatives, though they were quite urgent from a strategic perspective. We just kept our heads down and barely got our core documents out on time. I'm sure you've done that at some point or the other too. The critical part there, of course, is ensuring that your leaders are aware that you're shelving these initiatives because of the current budget situation. On the flip side, it's also important to know, what the right time is to make a pitch. It's actually child's play if you look at it, and I mean that literally, right? I have a 9-year-old, and for all the parents here today, I'm sure you had many such instances in the past 2 years. Our kids know exactly when to come and ask us for something that is otherwise off limits or difficult to get, right? And that's when we're on that all-important call with our boss. Right? Chocolates, TV time, junk food, ask and it shall be yours. My next point is about using third-party authority, right, whenever possible. To go back to that UX example again, you can bolster your case by quoting a source that your leader trusts, which says that HFI is the industry standard in UX certification, right? Or if you're pitching for an expensive, somebody mentioned a tool, right? So if you're pitching for an expensive tool, say for working on 3D illustrations, right? And those are very expensive, right? You can establish again how this is the industry standard. And related to this is another point about social proof. This is where you point out that everyone is headed in this direction, right? And it's prudent for us to do so as well. You can use this tactic, when you're pitching for, setting up infrastructure for videos, for example. I think we're doing okay on time. The next one is kind of related to tailoring your pitch, right? It's about following whatever norms your leader is used to. So if your leader prefers a literal, elevator pitch, right, the casual meeting, find an opportunity to do that, right? If they prefer a formal setting with a proper presentation, hardcore data and works, do that. Right? And there's another thing to keep in mind when talking to senior leaders. They usually process things super fast, right? And some of them instantly switch off if you spend too much time explaining a single point. I have a lot of, I've had a lot of situations like this where I've come to a slide, I'm taking a deep breath to explain the first of my 5 points on the slide, right? And in that time, my senior VP tells me, okay, Sam, I got what's on the slide. What do you have for me next, right? So every time I present to the senior VP, I ensure, that I don't talk about anything he already knows, and that there's always something new to catch his attention. My ninth point is, yeah, it's kind of very obvious, but you'd be surprised at the number of times I've seen this happening, right? Just the other day, we were talking to a group of engineering VPs about how content reviews, and this I'm sure something that all of you will identify with, right? How content reviews from SMEs and their teams need to be done much better. And we said that content reviews are a problem, and we need to address that. If we had stopped there, all we'd be doing is highlighting a problem, right? And lazily, expecting the VPs to propose a solution. And with so many competing priorities, right, for the VPs, that's a solution that's never going to come. And more importantly, it's a statement that doesn't really help anyone, right? It doesn't raise your credibility either. So we didn't stop at that, right? We went on to say that we studied the issue. We ran a pilot for one user guide where we got involved from the SFS stage, actually signed off on the SFS, identified a core team of cross-functional people to review our content, got testers to do content validation during SIT period, and only then gave a sign-off to publish the content. And we saw very promising results. Right? So it's just not a process. We had results from that as well. Right? We didn't have any customer-found defects for that content since we started this new process. So now the conversation really changes from, hey, your SMEs are broken, or well, their reviews are broken, right? To, hey, we identified an issue with your review process and we worked with one of your teams to fix it, and we've dramatically increased the content quality. Now, our ask of you is simple. We need your help to scale this across all your development teams, right? So I can't reiterate this enough, right? Sorry, just need to get this out of the way. Coming back again and again, sorry. Okay, it's gone. Right. To reiterate, proposing a solution when you pitch is very obvious, but it is critical. Okay, that gets me to my last tip. Yes, you proposed a solution, working with a dedicated review team, right? But if the implementation of that solution needs the engineering VP to hire, 10 people just to review our content, that's never going to happen, right? And that's pretty obvious, right? The implementation of the solution has to be feasible. Let's take a different perspective now. Let's look at this from a leader's perspective. What do leaders really look for when they hear a pitch, right? The first question they ask is, what's in it for me, right? Why should I spend my time listening to you? And at that level, they really don't have that extra 5 minutes to spare, right? So you better ensure that, that you're not wasting their time, right? Or else you'll never get an audience anytime soon. The second test you have to pass is the answer to the question, what is in it for my customer, right? From a leader's perspective. Does what you're doing have a strong and demonstrable customer focus, right? If you answer that question, you move on to the third one, which is, what's in it for the organization or company, right? How does the immediate organization benefit from what you're proposing? If you pass these 3 tests, right, there's a good chance that you'll be successful in your pitch. So I've given you a lot of examples from Tech Talks. Let me end this with a quick story from outside Tech Talks, right, to show you how beautifully these answers, right, to these 3 questions can come together. So when I say Mera Wala Pink, right, does any company come to mind? Yes, no? Have you heard that phrase, Mera Wala Pink?
Is it Asian Paints?
Correct. It's Asian Paints. Yes. And you probably know what they did, right? They were the first company to come up with the idea of customizable paint colors, right? So now you don't have to go to the store and look at the catalog and choose an existing color. You can create your own colors, right? It's a big win for the customer. Well, it doesn't help me personally because I'm colorblind, but you get the idea, right? But do you think whoever pitched this idea thought only about the customized colors? No, right? I'm sure they highlighted the customer benefit, but what they actually also did is they solved a huge supply chain issue for the company, right? So earlier the company would come up with some colors, and the paint would slowly make its way from. And obviously there's a lot of research that goes into coming up with colors that sell, right? And then the paint would be manufactured. It'll make its way slowly through wholesaler, dealer, and a few other places before it comes to the retail store, right? And by then 2 things could happen, right? 1, the color could already be out of vogue, right? Your research would be outdated. And 2, there's really no way to reliably estimate, right, what colors sell well, right? And what would become a surplus stock nightmare, right? So with the customized paint, they didn't have to really worry about stocks or styles, right? They shipped the same primary colors to each store, and customers created the colors, right? So it's a win for the customer. It's a huge supply chain win for the company. And of course, whichever leader at Asian Paints heard that initial pitch, that is framed with these strategic objectives, they would have instantly seen why this was worth their time. So that kind of brings me to the end of everything I wanted to share today. If there are only 5 things that you take away from what I said today, right? It's this: building relationships and credibility is, the foundation, right? Without that, nothing can get done, right? Do whatever you can at your level before you go to a leader, and if possible, pilot something before you pitch, right? And always keep these 3 questions in mind from the leader's perspective, right? What's in it for your leader? What's in it for the customer? And what's in it for the organization? So that's all I had for today. I'm open to questions. Let me see if there are any questions. Okay, I don't see any questions, but folks on the call, so I see a lot of senior leaders here. Feel free to pitch in, share some stories, right? This is anyway a group learning opportunity. Be more than happy, if you guys can pitch in as well.
Yeah, sure. Either you can type your question in the Q&A, or if you want to, just unmute yourself and speak, you can ask your question to Sam. Very useful, Sam. Lots of tips, I think. Yeah, these are the things. It's like what they don't teach you at IIM, right? But what makes you successful. Yeah, absolutely. So,
Hi, Sam.
yeah, go ahead.
Hello, Sam.
This is Mridula.
Yeah, Mridula.
Yeah, so from my experience, what I've seen is that when the senior leadership is from a non-content background, and it becomes, 1 point more cumbersome to convince about a particular idea, or to get some headcount, or convince about some resources. So
Right.
what is the best practice do you see there? Do we really start from the scratch, explain them the whole process? But sometimes they don't have for that entire elaborate pitch.
Right. So you're right. So I mean, if you get 5 minutes to pitch for staffing, right, you can't start from scratch, right? And you're very right when you say, they a lot of the times they don't really know what we do either, right? We've had a situation, many years back, where we were having this conversation about staffing, and I'd met my senior VP for the first time, right? And so there's a big budget discussion happening, right? And we tried to say that we absolutely need X number of people, right? I think what he told me at that time has stuck with me, right? He said, Sam, I think the problem is not the work that you're doing. I think the problem is that your leaders don't understand the relevance of the work you're doing, right? And this is many years back, right? But I think to answer your question, I don't think this is a problem you can solve in 5 minutes, right? Unless you have built that foundation, unless you've used the past several years to build that relationship, right? You'd be very lucky if you're successful in pitching for staffing in 5 minutes. So that's been my experience, and I don't know if that answers your question, Mridula, but.
So if I understand you correctly, it should be done on a gradual and consistent basis, where we are building the case, maybe through emails or through, by building rapport, where he has the context, and then
Exactly.
putting a 5-minute pitch where I'm being able to, convince the person, yes, this is important and this needs to be done.
Yeah. And yes, and so building the case gradually is important, and also before that, building the relationship, right? And in the 5-minute pitch, what I would focus on is, not that, hey, I need more people, right? But hey, these are the things that we're doing, right? And this is how it fits into your goals, right? This fits into what the organization is trying to do, right? And also highlight, so I don't know if you saw the Excel I shared earlier, right? Highlight the gaps and say, with these many people, this is all we can do, right? Now, if you're not, and we all understand, we senior leaders, we all understand budgets, right? So if you feel that, if the budgets are not available now, I need your help, right? I need your help, and I need your help to talk to the stakeholders to get to an understanding of what is it that we can drop, right? I think one mistake we all make, and I've made this for years, right, is we keep getting cuts, right? We don't get replacement recs, and then we keep covering for it, right? We have 10 people initially, it becomes eight people do 10 people's work, right? Then five people do 10 people's work. I think that's a fundamental mistake that we make, right? I've done that for many years. I think in the past 2 or 3 years, I've kind of put my foot down. Okay, you're taking 2 people away, right? I understand your budget priorities, right? But you have to help me prioritize my deliverables, right? With 8 people, this is all I can do. Here are some of the combinations, right? I have to stop, working on digital adoption platforms. I have to completely stop doing videos. Hey, I've reached a situation where, I can't even deliver all my core deliverables, right? Okay, so release notes are important. Maybe, some additional docs that we do that. Maybe we won't get to that, right? So we have to, get a buy-in for that. Ask your leader to work with your stakeholders to get their buy-in, right? And typically when we've had those situations, those conversations, yes, we've agreed that, some of the strategic initiatives can be, on hold, right? But when it comes to touching core deliverables, we've typically always got contractor funding at least, right? If FTE is not possible because of, we've always got contractor funding.
Right. Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think one way in which you can, use that 5 minutes is if there is any urgent customer problem, right? So if there are customer issues, so you can talk to like the field or get a QA, and there's some burning issue which can only be solved with, key technical information quickly. So either, the product is not yet ready to come with a fix, so you at least need to get the information out, or because, as Sam said, you have sort of dropped some deliverables, but then that has caused an impact to the customers, right? And there is, so if you either get that kind of information, I mean, that's where very quickly, they don't need to know what you do or who you are, but here's the problem, and we can help you with this particular one if you can give us some budget for, contractors or whatever. Yeah,
that's a very good point, Sanjay. An extremely good point, and that goes to the heart of using those 5 minutes to identify with identify the biggest problem that the leader will identify with, right? You focus on that. Don't focus on your history. Focus on what's important to the leader, right? And so how you can help with that.
Yeah. Thank you, Sandhya.
Yeah, Sam. So I liked 2 things. This is Anu here, right? Again, 2 rules that I'm generally mindful of. One is to never overpromise, right? You have to find a balance between realistic deliverables and yet paint the picture of what problems you're going to solve, right? The reason is the whole time that you're talking in front of the executive, they're adding up the risks of what you're saying on one side, and they're weighing it against potential, rewards on the other side, right? So they know it. They're very smart, so they know it. So to ensure that it is grounded, yet futuristic, it's a balance that you have to find. The second one is be prepared for pushback, right? Do like your homework. Anticipate very tough questions. You may catch an executive, being very go easy on one day, but sometimes, anticipate tough questions because they're great. If you did not get any questions, you should actually be worried a little, right? But so anticipate that, have crisp, clear answers, run it by, if you have a mentor or a peer in another in another organization, run it by them and before you go and pitch your idea. Yeah.
Absolutely, Anand. That reminds me of the time when we were working together, and our SVP was in a conference room. We were waiting outside for our turn, and people were coming out and scaring us, saying he's literally chewing up everybody. We walked in very scared, and we done our prep, right? We done our prep, and our 5 minutes went really well.
Yeah.
We have a question from Mandira in chat. She's asking, building relationship is important. What are some tips for creating trust engagement with leaders? Any example if you can provide?
So I think trust comes mostly from results, right? if I go back to some of the examples I mentioned, right? If I go to a leader and say, give me money to do videos, right? He doesn't know me well. He doesn't know what I've done, right? He doesn't know that whether I'm capable of doing this, right? So trust comes from doing things on your own, and showcasing it, right, to internal stakeholders, showcasing it to customers, getting feedback from customers, right, and then showing that to the leader, right? When you go to the leader saying, hey, this is what I've done, this is my body of work, right, and this is what the customers have said about it, right, this is how it can help them, right, I think that builds your credibility.
Yeah, and
anything you'd like to add to that, Sandhya or Anu?
Yeah, no, I think that's very valid. At the end of the day, it is, yeah, especially senior execs, right? It is the bottom line. How much of a good relationship you have, the results, I think, come first, and then, the rest follows.
Okay.
I think somebody else, you were asking a question, was it Raman or somebody else? And Mridula has put the feedback form in the chat. So please do take a minute and fill in your form there. And I just need the last 5 minutes. We do want to talk about the next program that you're going to work on. But yeah, I think somebody else was asking a question. Go ahead.
Hi, Sam. This is Raman.
Raman, can you speak up a little bit, please? I can't hear you very well.
It was excellent. Sorry, your voice was breaking. Can you please repeat?
No, I just want to speak. Can you speak up a little bit? I can't hear you very well.
Okay. Is it any better now?
Yeah, much better. Please go ahead.
Okay. Thanks a lot. It was an excellent session. And I must say there are quite a few similar instances where I was kind of stuck when I went with an idea pitch and all. So you broke down the pitch into 3 important questions at the end. So what is in it for what is in it for the leader, for the customer, and the company? So the last 2 questions, customer and company, I could follow easily, but how can you please repeat on that part? How we should pitch in and say what is in it for the leader? How we can help them understand our pain point, what we're trying to solve?
Right.
Yeah.
So when I say what's in it for the leader, it's not about them understanding us, right? It's about we understanding what is important for the leader, right? You have to understand what are the leader's priorities, right? And pitch your idea in the framework of those priorities, right? If you come up, what's important to you might not be important to the leader, right? Again, going back to that example for kids, right? They come up with these, super critical needs, right? Which are mostly trivial sometimes, right? So you have to understand that, the leader's priorities are not exactly, the same as yours, right? You understand their priorities and see how, what is important for you can fit into their priorities. So frame it in the sense of their priorities. That's what I meant by what's in it for your leader, right? So as a leader, if I'm the leader, my question is, why should I listen to you, Raman? What do you have for me that's worth my time?
Okay. Understood.
Sure.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, and one way of finding that out is, of course, looking at their goals, right? I think all organizations have goals published, right, for their whole org. So if you can relate it some way to, some goal that they have, organizational goal, I think that will help with alignment. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and that's that's a great way to come up with your entire strategy for the year as well, right? Look at what the pillars are for your leaders' goals, right, and adapt those to what you're doing. Right, and make sure that everything that you're doing is aligned to what what's important to your organization. I think we're probably out of questions, so Sandhya, you could go ahead and take the rest of the session, please.
Yes. Thank you so much, Sam. I think, as I said, these kind of sessions are very valuable. And thanks so much all the leaders who have, spent time and effort in putting together some excellent presentations and sharing. So Manage the Docs has been running this since last August, and a lot of leaders have come and spoken for first-line managers, for the senior leadership track, and also for entrepreneurial track. So thank all the presenters, all the program managers, and all of you who come in and listen. Hopefully, it's been of value to you. And, if you have something, success stories to share, please do share that. But I just wanted to take a few minutes and announce our next program that we're planning to roll out. So this was great. I think, folks like Sam come and speak and we get a lot of influence, a lot of wisdom. But how do we take this in? How do we adapt it to our workplace? So we thought of launching like a mentoring program for the next quarter. So we're going to pause the leadership session. So this was actually the last session for the season, so to speak. And for the next quarter, we're going to have mentoring. And what we thought is to have a maximum number of people be able to participate, to have a group mentoring program. So we're going to have 4 mentors. So that's Akash, Asha, Lian, and myself. And there are 4 topics which we picked from your feedback forms, that these are the 4 key topics where you wanted mentoring. And so the sign up is open today. So Sharath, if you can share that sign up. I think he's shared some FAQs which talks about how the mentoring system will work. There are only 10 mentees per mentor. So if you want to, quickly look at the FAQs, if it's of interest to you, do sign up. We're going to run it for a quarter, so 3 months, 1 session every month, but we'll also have some engagement between the sessions. And it's on particular topics, which is again given the FAQs. As I said, it's first come, first serve, just the first 10 mentees. So please go ahead and sign up for that. I think that'll be a great extension of what we've been doing so far, right? And if this works, we'll get again feedback from you all, and we can do more sessions with more leaders if they're willing to spare the time and if there is interest from all of you. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share about today. Was on the mentoring program, the group mentoring circle, as we call it, which is going to be launched. And lots of information on there on the Manage the Docs web page, and also the Manage the Docs LinkedIn group. So if you're not part of the Manage the Docs LinkedIn group, please go and sign up. I think that's where we give updates on all our program sessions, and all these sessions are recorded and it's up there on the Manage the Docs wiki as well. So that's what I wanted to share. Yes. Any questions? And we're going to start that from next month. So as soon as we finish the sign up, we're going to launch it from, I think, next Friday. So the next Fridays, 4 Fridays, each mentor will be taking 1 session. Okay, that's all I had to say. So thanks very much, Sam. And thanks to everybody for joining in. I hope you filled out the feedback form, and I hope to see some of you in future mentoring sessions.
Thanks, Sandhya. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your time.
Thanks.